jumping into this today because we're running a little bit late. And so I am just going to dive in with Jill Fishman and Samantha Benson, two veterans of the fashion industry, have worked for multiple incredible designers. Jill is Michael Kors. We're talking like Michael Kors, Donna Karan, like the works. Jill is a brand builder. Is that a right way to say it?
Sure.
I mean, I'm going to let you guys do this. And then Samantha has her own brand, Sammy Nat, which is really cool and takes over like the whole children's space. So let's just jump in. And Jill, why don't you start by introducing yourself, giving a little bit of your background, and then maybe tweak it into also why you're talking to me today, why it makes any sense to talk to somebody who deals with women's health, wellness, and preventive care.
Okay. Well, thank you. And so I am Jill in terms of my career background. I'm based in the city. I live in Tribeca in New York with my family, my 12-year-old son. I have been in the fashion business since I finished college and have sort of been in the licensing and marketing and international space throughout my career. I've spent 20 years at Michael Kors most recently, and I started when there were 40 people and now there's 15,000. And so it's been an amazing journey. And, I've run their licensing division as well as several other things. And now I'm sort of focusing on some brand and strategy transformation with the team. And to why am I here? In December of 2020, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I also subsequently last year had a hysterectomy. And so I am connecting the dots with you happy to share my story on that with you.
Okay, that makes sense. It's funny. One of my best friends, who I've known since we were 12 years old, she's just leaving her job and has been there since graduating from college. I mean, for 25 years. And I said to her, I'm like, you're like, it's like so abnormal now. Like there's nobody who's been at the same place for 2 decades. I've been doing this my entire adult life, but it's so unusual and yet kind of amazing, like the longevity at one place and watching it grow and helping it grow. And I mean, it's a different experience than what's typical now, which is moving to maybe staying in the same industry, but moving around a lot. It's a really different adult life, I would say.
100%. I mean, I don't think there's anybody else. Maybe there's one or two that are still at the company. And, and I think just what I've had so many different roles and seen the company through so many different phases of growth and had like such a close connection with Michael and the management there that it kind of became home for me. And so, I truly loved it. So yeah. And, I think because of that, they were so supportive of that even in the past few years, as I did have to, for the first time ever, like not be as present for certain periods as I normally was. So it definitely benefited me from that perspective.
It's really neat. It's really cool. And who doesn't love Michael Kors? Yeah. All right, Samantha, tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I am Samantha. I actually have worked with Jill. I started my career after college in fashion at Michael Kors, doing branding and marketing. This was about 15 or 16 years ago. Jill and I worked together for about 5 years. That kind of set my fashion path. Towards the end of my stay at Michael Kors, I started concepting out a children's wear brand where I was really, a lot of my friends were starting to have children, and I was a guest to a lot of baby showers, and I really couldn't find really quality gifts that I was proud to give. So I set out to look at different manufacturers that could put together really wonderful, beautiful fashion forward pieces that moms could kind of get on board with, but also were quality, and people like me found it very easy to shop. So fast forward a couple years later, I really jumped in and started Sammy and Nat, opened a few stores, and have my online website, a wholesale element of the business, and have really kind of anchored ourselves as a baby gifting destination in the marketplace. In addition to the product itself, one of my big drivers of why and how and kind of we created this story around a personal story of mine, which was my mom. She passed away when I was a little girl. I have a younger sister. I'm Samantha. My sister's Natalie, which is where Sammy and Nat comes from. And she was a midwife and was, just a lot of my memories as a little kid had a lot to do with babies. And so it never really felt like this foreign concept, even though I was in women's fashion, coming kind of back to that full circle moment where it was about children and fashion and babies. And it felt like it was the right thing to do and the right story to tell. And ever since then, when it comes to women's health, babies, children in need, that's kind of where we focus our priorities in terms of partnerships through foundations like the Lynne Cohen Foundation. So I'm excited to be here today and learn more about you guys and talk about how this all is so important.
And how did your mom pass away?
Sorry, left that out. She passed away of breast cancer. She did all the traditional, this was 30 something years ago. She did all the traditional treatments, but then ultimately decided that she didn't want to continue. So unfortunately, it was something that took her life. But just today, luckily, and just how much more there is to offer and how much far we've come, it's pretty incredible.
And how old were you when she passed away? Really young, really young.
I had just turned 7. So I was 7 and my sister was 4. So, my dad, who was in his 30s, was left with us too and did an incredible job with the best he had. It was definitely, and I think as I get older, just realizing what that meant. When you're a little kid, you're kind of resilient. You just go on and figure it out. But then as you get older, in hindsight, you're like, wow, that was big and
traumatic.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Do you have kids?
I don't yet. Hopefully soon.
I was much older than you when my mom passed away. I was 21 years old. My little brother was 15. But it hit me in a different way because I wasn't a tiny child. 4 years old are like little children still. But I really understand now what it meant for that age, at that age, to lose a parent. Now that I have kids that old, my oldest son's 20, and I don't know what he would do without me. He's a grown up. He's a grown human. He's an adult. He can vote, but I don't know, all the things that he asks all the time, all the little and big moments. And then I also have an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old, and it blows my mind when they were hovering around the age of my little brother was 10 when my mom was diagnosed with cancer and 15 when she passed away. And different boys and girls are really different. I have 3 boys, obviously, but those fundamental growth years of adolescence, it's a big deal. And so you don't realize it when you're going through it. It's just your normal. It's your reality, right? And then when you get older, even if you don't ever have children and you look back, it's I don't know what the word is, mind-blowing. Like this week, my mom's anniversary of her passing was 2 days ago, and it's been 26 years, and it's still raw, which sort of blows me away. I would argue that it's softer, but not easier as time goes on. That's sort of how I've decided to understand it, I think, for myself. But I think that having a traumatic experience, losing a parent and having cancer, Jill, it changes your life and your outlook. It changes how you operate in the world, how you see the world. And I don't wish bad things on anybody. I don't wish the loss of a parent. I don't wish being a horrible diagnosis of the disease. But there's something kind of magical about it because it gives you such a perspective that you would have otherwise never had. And I think if you're a lemons into lemonade kind of person, and if you have the ability to have a positive trajectory in your life, I don't know. Do you think I'm just blabbing or do you ladies
No,
agree?
100%. I mean, I just think that like, even like at the most base level, just realizing even as like, whether you're a 7-year-old girl or a person in their late 40s, just the amount of strength and resilience that you have as an individual that comes through, that you really like harness and, put forth personally, is something that I never even knew that I had in me. Like I was always like a worker, and that was my strength. I could do a lot work wise, but I definitely feel like I am a different version of myself. And, I'm so thankful in so many ways to have come through this, especially during the height of COVID, which was so not easy. Yeah, no, I totally agree. A different perspective, and that I would have never had. And, been making different decisions as a person now than I probably would have made prior to my diagnosis.
Yeah. And Samantha, how did that change your life? I mean, obviously now with giving back and using your business to really make an impact, but like as your personal story, what's your take on it? I'm really digging in here. Sorry, you guys probably were not expecting me to go to really push you down this road.
I mean, unique and specific to me, I think losing your parent and your mother, who as a woman is your person, I think kind of forced me to have a sense of independence really early on, which I think definitely was a piece of, or part of me that has come through in my adult life, including having the guts to quit my job and start a business and all of those things. So, I mean, I think that of course there's silver linings and really great qualities that come from having to be resilient and strong early on and grow up maybe a little too quick. Of course, though, like with my sister having 2 little girls under the age of 4 now, seeing, and just kind of going back to what you said before, Amy, seeing young children as an adult, particularly the ones that you love, and equating that to how old you were when, or a child losing their own parent, it is pretty unbelievable, because in my mind, 7 years old felt so old when it happened. And now I look at my niece who's 4, who was as old as Natalie was when she passed. It's I don't know if there's a word for it. It just seems a little unbelievable that happened to us, and that we are here now and are okay and got through it. With my nieces, and I'm sure when I have children, like there's something about your kids and seeing and the people you really love and being able to kind of equate those two situations. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I think I've thought about a lot more recently than I ever have.
Yeah.
So even like seeing yourself at the age that your mom passed, and like living past that age as well,
That's right too. And last year was the year that I was the age that she passed, which it was a strange feeling. It was just, you kind of get catapulted into this thought of wow, like, and I didn't really, I mean, I was 7, so I didn't really know her on a adult level. So to kind of really imagine myself as her and be as an adult, not as a child, is it gives you a different perspective for sure.
It definitely does. It definitely does. And so, Samantha, when I had kids, I felt the same way. I was like, oh, there's no good baby gifts. There's no good like stuff for me to get. And I should start a baby line. Like I should do this. I think so many women feel that way and want to do it, but very few do. And very few actually like, I think inherently know where to start, know where to go, know how to put it together, and then like create a legitimate business. What is it inside of you? Like, first of all, how did you know how to go down that road? Was it from your prior experience, Michael Kors, or you were doing it almost at the same time for a while? Or do you think it's like, I mean, you're an entrepreneur. Are we born with that? Like, how do you explain it? Because everyone who goes through different stages of life at some point, it's like, oh, there's not enough, maternity clothing, or there's not enough kids, or there's not enough kid stuff, or there's not enough, like, I don't know, I moved and nobody's here to help me move, and no one's here to help me like figure out where to live. Like I should start that business. But I mean, most people don't. They just like the thought's like, yeah, that was a good idea. So how do you take an idea and make it reality?
So to answer your question, I have no idea. So I think in hindsight, looking back before I was ever even out of college, but more so as a kid, I was always really creative and always wanted to create something. And that whether it was bracelets and selling them to my neighbors, or I pretended I was an interior designer and architect for like a good 2 years. I'm pretty sure there are drawings all over my house. Just even like the Barbie houses I used to build were like 3 rooms in our home. And so I think I always kind of had that like build and do it big kind of mentality. I will say, like, when I went to college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't ever know that I'm going to start a children's brand or even a clothing brand for that matter. Like, that was not something that was on my radar. My grandmother even told me recently that she remembers me saying throughout my teenage years that like, I'm going to own my own business one day, things that I don't even remember saying, but there was just something in me, I think, that just lived there. And I don't know where that came from. And I do think that that's probably just something that lives within inside you. When I started at Michael Kors, it gave me a foundation. I mean, what I learned there really resonated with me. As Jill said, when we started there, or around the same time, I mean, it was a small team, and there was like such a pivotal time for Michael Kors and the growth that they had. So we had really small teams and we were doing a lot. So it was kind of like our hands were in everything. And just what I learned in that short time, I mean, it was 5 or 6 years, but what I learned, I just really, and this was all at the beginning of when Instagram had just came. I mean, it wasn't even a thing. Facebook was just kind of, I think they implemented their advertising during the time I was there. Like, that didn't even exist. So it was such a interesting time to be a brand, let alone a new brand, to kind of utilize that in a different way. So that, paired with my experience of dealing with my friends having kids and the baby shower, it was kind of this trifecta of something I've always wanted to do. I saw a need and I had the experience, and because it's fashion and product based, and I was also in my 20s, so I didn't have a ton to lose. It felt like I'm going to take a risk. It's still crazy.
Ignorance can be blissful when you're like just going to jump in. Who knows what you're getting into?
Yeah. Right. So yeah. I mean, it's been a ride. It's been an experience. We learned a ton.
Well,
That's
every
awesome.
time I would speak to Sam as she was like making products and shipping them out of like her father's garage, I think, I would say, like, well, how are you doing this? She's like, I don't know. But I found a woman in Peru. She's making it. I'm getting it. I think Bloomingdale's wants it. And and Sam just kept going, like really just kept going. So I don't think you ever even stopped to think about whether you're doing the right thing or not, at least from whenever you,
Nope.
we were speaking.
Yeah. I mean, just failure was not an option. Like, it just was like, I really believed in it. I still do. I mean, there's something so special about having a gift that you love, then you give, and being able to have a place that's an easy to shop. And then also you kind of have a one-stop shop where you can have it gift wrapped, the note, the whole thing. That's just something that I just think is lost, especially in this like e-commerce world where everything's just thrown in a brown bag and delivered to your door type of thing. So during COVID, we learned that even more. And that's kind of what brought our online business up, was because people were gifting more than ever. And they really loved that heartfelt full package service. So
you've created a real community. Like it's more than just a brand. It's like, it's a real community. Jill, how do you like talk about your creativity and the way that you see things? Because when I read into like what you do and what your skills are and what your expertise are, to me, it's like boom, like things everywhere that you like know how to put together and make work. Is that a fair assessment? And to me, that takes an insane amount of every skill, like every parts of creativity and organizational and business power and entrepreneurial skills and like chutzpah, like all of it wrapped up in a bow. I mean, how did you get here? Like, how did you figure that all out and make it work?
Yeah. I never thought, number one, I would work in fashion. It was studying economics and Japanese. I thought I was going to work on Wall Street. And then I started interviewing when I was in college, and they wanted me to like wear a suit with pearls. And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. And I had I'd happened to intern at Donna Karan for a couple of summers, and really for lack of any other job, that's the job I took, because when my parents said to me, well, you've graduated college now you have to go work. It's like, duh, but sort of, I guess it's like, this is what you do next.
Yeah, I'm invested with my son. Well, we've given you all the tools, so bye-bye soon.
Exactly. Yeah. No, launch yourself. And so I eventually became involved in the licensing aspect of the fashion business, which is super interesting and dynamic, because what it essentially is you are taking your brand and identifying products or even markets around the world that are not your core competency to operate. So it's whether it's a watch business or sunglasses, fragrance, a host of things. And what we do and what I loved about it is that, we are responsible for, so say, for example, Michael Kors watches are made by Fossil. This is public knowledge. They're our licensee. And while we're responsible for the revenue that the category brings in, it's our responsibility as the, in between, working with Michael on design and product development to ensure that this other company is designing things that look and feel like the brand. And then we're ensuring that the marketing efforts that they're doing are in line with what the company is doing, and they're selling and distributing. And because I've worked with different partners and different categories and all sorts of big companies such as Fossil, Luxottica, Estee Lauder, or smaller companies, I've had such an amazing experience, and I love it so much because I'm never doing the same thing every day. So, and I love what I love, like, I think the most about my bit of what I've done is really working to motivate creatives with a strategic notion in mind, and helping to inspire them to be creative to help build the brand and build the business. And so I love it. I really love it so much. I'm really going to miss it when I'm gone, but I've been so fortunate to develop so many amazing relationships, and especially when I started at Michael when it was a baby business. We always joke that people thought Coors was beer in most parts of America when we started, and to sort of like go through all the different inflection points, it's super rewarding and not always successful, but it's been. That's what has really kept me going for all these years there.
And what's next? Are you allowed to say?
I don't know. I just, I think in a perfect world, I would love to get involved with some companies that are in a smaller stage of growth, and to really find ways to work with either founders or, businesses of a smaller scale. To help the founder, use whatever experience I've gained in my career to help them drive their own strategic path forward to help build their business. I think that would be, at least career-wise, that I think that would be a great way for me to, see the next 10, 15 years of my career. So,
and that's how we met. I mean, that's why we're doing this, because you're working with a brand that we are now working with. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, Boundless Giving, which is a platform started by Ryan Jaffe, who I went to high school with, and another mutual friend of ours reconnected. I think I was really engaged by the platform that they're developing, which is create a platform for bringing products to people with a charitable donation attached to it with ease. And, I think that, whether Michael Kors has excess, inventory or things from past seasons or even current seasons, wouldn't it be great to create a platform that customers can engage and find charities for all different causes that you believe in as an individual, and you make a purchase and you can assign a donation to something that really speaks to you. And I think that I think it helps close a little bit of that fashion loophole from a sustainability perspective. And then it also allows for great partnerships with organizations such as yours and bringing it to audiences that maybe might not have exposure to it. So that really intrigued me. And that's how I started working with them last year. So it's, super, super, if I could help them sort of find the path towards that, I think it would be super rewarding.
So it's such a no-brainer too. I mean, the Boundless Giving like the platform and the way it's been set up, it's like a no-brainer. Like you're going to buy that anyways. And why not have a charitable component? I think, but interestingly, I never thought about it from the sustainability point of view with fashion. And I think it's a brilliant piece of it for sure. And that's certainly a big direction that I think fashion's heading in. I am certainly not an expert, but just like you don't just give away something now, you resell it and it's just as good as new. And it's just really changed the way people see and are able to purchase not just luxury goods, but all goods. So to bring that piece into it, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it could be a great option for, fashion companies, product companies to, make this type of interaction part of their product cycles so that, if there is, merchandise, if it needs to go somewhere and it needs to be sold somewhere, like, to your point, it's such a no-brainer. Like, why not associate it with a host of charities? And I think that for these types of foundations and charities, I think that it can almost like extend their purpose beyond, maybe certain organizations that maybe only do a gala a year or a more limited amount of fundraising. I think it can certainly bring fundraising to a generation of people that it can be all day, every day. It doesn't have to be relegated to certain times of the year. So, I think that the foundation is such a great concept.
And it's like, what happens to all that stuff after the sale's over? That giant sale where
Right.
There's a really fun store I love in LA, and they have this biannual, I think it's biannual, twice a year, this great sale, but it like starts at 30% off. And then if you wait a few weeks, it's 50% off. And you wait a few more weeks, it's 75% off. And it's like beautiful things. It's great sweaters and dresses and everything. And, you take the risk, someone's going to buy it. But if you're willing to wait it out, like it's 75% off. But then you think, what happens to all the stuff they don't sell? And where does it go?
Right.
And that's like, as a consumer, you're not really paying attention to that. But I would assume as a business owner or working for the brands, like that's a big part of the cycle. It's like, where does this stuff go? So,
right.
People will grab it and then have like a bonus on it, I think.
Seemingly, I don't want to generalize, but, younger generations of people are so much more purpose conscious and how is a brand showing up and to what are the values that brand embodies? And I think if you can really kind of practice what you preach, I think that is Boundless is a perfect execution of making it easy for brands to realize some of their purpose goals.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much information available that most certainly was not when I was younger and shopping. Like, you didn't even think two thoughts about where your jeans were made or where, on a higher end scale, where the diamonds are from. Like you just didn't, it wasn't even something you knew about, you knew to think about, or you knew to ask. And now it's quite prevalent, right? The information is out there and staring at you in the face all the time. So I agree with you. I think younger people, and now, I mean, us too, like you can't ignore those social responsibilities, I think, in being part of being a socially responsible human. So to shift gears just a minute. So you both have history of cancer and history of cancer in your family. What have you done, or what do you know to do to take control of your own health and wellness and make sure that you're continuing, Jill and you, Sam, are doing everything in your powers to know as much about your body, yourself, and stay healthy?
Just to piggyback on what I mentioned before, which is there's been so much development and research and science and all those things. As I've grown up and in my teens, 20s, now 30s, there's been things that have been introduced along the way that I've obviously jumped on, like the BRCA testing and things like that, that I'm eligible for, given that my mom was affected by this. So as those sort of things come onto the scene, onto the medical scene, I've definitely jumped on them. But because it was first relation with my mom, I started doing mammograms and yearly checkups in my late 20s. And even just more recently now, I'm going to start doing MRIs in between every yearly mammogram. So that's been my most recent kind of shift in terms of more frequency of being checked. Luckily, my testing came back negative. So that changed the course a little bit, or it lessened the course of what I needed to do yearly, but as much as you can to be preventative.
And by the way, it's not obvious, because the road you're going down is actually not usual. More women, especially women who have a significant or a history of cancer in their family, or their mom was really young. A lot of women don't do what you're doing. So what you're doing is are the right, great things. But don't sell yourself short, and don't think that it is obviously I'm taking advantage of these developments in this field, because a lot of women don't, and sort of just cross their fingers and hope for the best. And so you're taking, you're educating yourself and then using the tools that are available to keep yourself healthy, which is absolutely, you don't need me to tell you, phenomenal, but it's not usual. Sadly.
Yeah. And I mean, that is true. And I think you're right to the point. I mean, you have to be your own advocate. I mean, you have to seek it out if it's not, and ask the questions, because it is not presented to me, to you, to me, whoever, on a silver platter of this is what you need to do and this is what's out there. I mean, you have to, unfortunately, do your own research and ask the questions, because it's not always so obvious.
No, 100%. You have to be your own best advocate. You have to put your mask on first, and you have to be willing to jump into the knowledge that's available and go get it, and then use it to your advantage, because no one else is going to do that for you. No matter how well you're surrounded by people who love you, like, it's on you 100%, especially as women. I mean, really, honest and truly. Yeah. And Jill, what are your
Yeah, no, for
protocols?
sure. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. My diagnosis came, talk about, my mom had breast cancer in her late 40s, and she has survived. She's in her early 80s now. She was BRCA negative. She had testing at the time. So I was never tested because we all assumed that I was negative. Flash forward. And the way I came about to my diagnosis, it was in the middle of COVID. My gynecologist had retired. I skipped my mammogram because I was not staying in the city. I decided to go back to my gynecologist that I used to see before I had my son. And I went for a checkup and she was the one that felt the lump in my breast. And so, it was a massive, it had been 18 months since I had any kind of screening. And, it really speaks volumes to the importance of staying current on all of your screenings, especially given my history. Despite the fact that my mom was BRCA negative, I subsequently had a gene panel done as soon as I had my diagnosis, which it was, and because there's more things to test for, as I learned. I wasn't really deep into knowledge.
Yes.
And
now there are so many genetic
don't assume
that we know about. Yeah.
Yeah. And even though I was BRCA negative through my gene panel, I think the woman that I worked with, the doctor that I worked with, she she was like, obviously there's something because my mother had it. My mother's first cousin had it. So, there's something, it just hasn't been found yet. And so, there's research that it will never be complete. But I think like where I am now is, I do not miss my doctor's appointments. I never miss my gynecologist appointment. My body is sort of knocking and saying hello. And, it's interesting. I mentioned I had a hysterectomy last year, and I really credit my gynecologist, the one who found my lump. She was like, I think you need to get your uterus a scan, ultrasound. You get a thickening of your lining, you're on tamoxifen, like, let's just get a baseline. And they found that I had a cyst, and, thank God it turned out to be non-cancerous. But, I'm so thankful for her, because she said to me, like, the scanning of your uterus and your ovaries it's not required. It's not recommended. She's like, and she said, I find so many things by, conducting additional testing, and which is not quote normal protocol, in many doctors' practices. So I'm so thankful for her. And I feel like every time I see her, I'm like, whatever you say, I'll do. And I'm not, waiting a second to do anything. And I don't think I was like that early, prior to my diagnosis. And so it's, it's definitely been a big fat eye opener for me, for sure.
It was crazy. I was talking about this the other day about, someone asked me, like, what are the takeaways? Like, what are my takeaways at the end of every conversation? One is every grown woman needs a gynecologist. And that sounds like a duh, like, oh, really?
Right.
Thanks, Amy. But I've met so many women, professional, highly educated women in their 30s who've never seen a gynecologist and are waiting until they want to start thinking about having children. And I like, that emoji where your head blows off, like your head blows off your body. And it's like, okay, baseline. Once you have your period, you should be seeing a gynecologist. And ideally, it's a gynecologist that you can have for a long period of time, who knows you're normal, who knows what your size, what's your normal size and shape. Whenever they're giving your exam, your uterus and ovaries are normal in size and shape. Well, compared to whom? Well, compared to you. And then a gynecologist that you trust, like you do, Jill, and that you can ask lots of questions, and you have no hesitation to dig in and say, okay, my mom tested negative for BRCA, what did you say, 40 years ago? So what's available now? What's the difference now? Like, what can we find out now? And if I test negative, but I definitely have a history of cancer in my family, of breast cancer, what does that mean? Well, my gynecologist said to me, it means that you have something, Amy. It means that we are going to treat you as if you're at high risk, even though you're testing negative for all the gene panels that we can give you. Okay, what does that mean? Like, what do I need to do? And not being afraid of those tools that we have, and putting them, all in your little tool belt and whipping them out when you need them. And so many women don't do that until they're faced with something big and get really scared by knowing, and by really understanding their bodies, what their body's normal is. And then like having, as you put it, Jill, like your body's talking to you. It's like knocking from the inside out. Hello, wake up, and we have to listen. It's like the first and foremost job. It's listening and saying, okay, we used to be encouraged to do self-breast exams, and now we're really not. And it's really because of insurance and ridiculous reasons. And they don't want too many women running in and insisting on, mammograms really young, or, doing biopsies. But being able to know how to do a proper self-breast exam, like, will allow you to, a lot of times, feel those lumps. And then obviously go to your gynecologist and your doctor on a regular basis, because they can feel things and see things that you can't, obviously.
Just to add to that, after my doctor felt my lump, the mammogram didn't even show anything because I had such dense breast. It wasn't
Which is
until
not unusual.
I had to go back for the ultrasound.
Yes.
Yeah. So I could have gone for an annual and they might have not seen anything anyway. So it is really a combination. There's no silver bullet. It is, to your point, all of the tools and frequency. Like, just be like, oh, last year was good. I don't need to go next year.
No, being with a gynecologist who knows you have dense breasts. So when she's or he is ordering your mammogram, they're 100% right ordering your ultrasound at the same time. So you go in and you get those two things. And it's being with a doctor that knows you and you trust, who says, a mammogram's not enough for you. You should be having an ultrasound. Or Samantha, you should be having MRIs in between your mammograms and ultrasounds because of your family history. And then following that protocol. So like, you don't stop going to the dentist just because you had like an easy checkup, you don't stop doing lots of other preventive measures for your own self. But as women, we get really hesitant when it comes to our gynecologic health and our breast health. Maybe because it's uncomfortable, maybe because you're so exposed, all those reasons, but it's like a number one.
Yeah. I definitely learned it's better to know than to not do it because you're scared. Like, I think that was
hoping for the best doesn't work out.
100%. That's not a strategy. Yeah. So, it's like, if this was your business to run, what would you do? Like, what would you tell the person working for you? Like, take that advice and apply it to your own health, which is so much more important.
Yes. I mean, it's like Samantha, you knew how to start a business. You knew how to run it, get it off the ground, hire employees, build not only a significant brand and identity, but a community and a place for people to gather and to be approach our health the same way. Make it your priority and think of all the things that are trickling around you that you need to grab onto and to hold onto to make it work. Because, you can't do any of those other things if you're struggling with your health, as you've been through, Jill, and you've seen Sam, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I do agree. I think having the baseline, and it goes beyond just your gynecologist. I mean, your regular doctor, and just asking for those baseline blood tests when you're young, and because they don't require it. So there could be something so small that if you see it, there's an uptick somewhere, be a symptom of something much bigger. So I think it is really important to really ask for those things and request them before anything is bad or wrong, or you're sick, or you don't feel well, or it's a lump or something. It's good to have. And then it will also, if something, God forbid, does happen, you do have that history to look back on to really kind of tell a story. And I think that's so helpful for doctors to guide you.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's the baseline is where you have to start, and you have to know that baseline. Otherwise, you'll never know if you're off of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. And recognizing as women that our bodies change multiple times throughout our life, and so what your normal baseline is in your teens, your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s is very different. And being sensitive to our own selves and accepting that, right? Understanding that, and then knowing that we're changing with that, and recognizing, okay, this is my new normal. This is how often I now get my period, and this is what they're like, which at least for me is way different than they were 10 years ago. And then knowing that, if there's just another significant change, why is that happening? Is it because, perimenopause is advancing, or is it because something else is going on, or my daily pooping routine? If it gets way off, I need to know that. It's so gross to talk about, but it's that's your body talking to you, knocking and saying, hello, you haven't pooped in 4 days. What is going on? Or,
right.
And so no one wants to hear these things, but it's true. I mean, it's your body telling you things that you have to listen to if you care about your health and wellness.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I definitely think that, being aware of your body and being cognizant of these changes, and, and then educating yourself. I think that, a lot of the times it's it's uncomfortable to know like what you should be aware that could be happening. But I think it does take a little bit of, you got to be self-aware enough to take stock. And it's like, no, it is better to have knowledge than ignorance is not bliss in these situations.
No. Definitely not. Definitely not.
No.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much. I feel like we could go on and really get into talking about some more stuff about poop and whatever, but we don't have to. So I'll quit it here. But thank you so much for being with me today and telling me a lot about your intimate and personal stories and how they've shaped you and made you both incredibly successful women. It's been wonderful, and I really, really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you. It was great to talk to you today.
That was great, Amy. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.